folks, and you can be seated. And I have overruled the last objection, so go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Hernandez.
You had indicated that you have provided with both the defense and the state with your full footage from the night of August 25th. Is that right?
Yes.
And you did that through an attorney from a law firm from Madison, correct?
Yes.
And that's an attorney whose firm is also providing services to the defendant in this case.
Today is the first time I'm hearing of this, so I don't have any bias because I just heard about this today.
After this incident, the shooting occurred on August 25th, 2020, you posted videos in support of the defendant after that, correct?
Can you repeat the date one more time?
After the shooting on August 25th, 2020, you posted videos on social media in support of the defendant, didn't you?
Define support.
You posted videos that you felt would help his case by showing aggressive behavior on the part of Joseph Rosenbaum, for example.
I posted the same video that is evidence today.
And in your commentary associated with that video, you made some disparaging remarks about Mr. Rosenbaum, didn't you?
What would you say is that?
Do you remember what you said?
I'd like to hear it.
So you don't remember what you said?
I have no idea. I post on Twitter many times a day. I posted many videos. If you could specify what exactly you're talking about, I could correctly answer you.
Sir, I'm going to ask you a question under oath.
I will tell you that I don't typically permit lawyers to remind people that they're under oath. And it's happened a few times in the case here. It's not permitted. I don't think most judges do allow it. Of course, they're under oath. So it's actually a suggestion by the questioner that the witness is not being truthful, and you're welcome to argue that at the end of the trial, but don't use it as a preface to your questions. Okay?
Have you ever posted anything on social media?
Yes.
In support of Kyle Rittenhouse?
One could argue yes.
You've also been watching this trial while it's been going on, correct?
Yes.
And when you've been testifying, you've been referring to the defendant by his first name, Kyle, correct?
Yes.
And you've been referring to the first person that he killed as Mr. Rosenbaum.
Yes.
Instead of Joe or Joseph, correct? Is that yes?
Yes.
Do you, as you sit here today, do you personally know the defendant?
No.
But yet you call him by his first name?
That's his legal name. What else am I supposed to call him?
Mr. Rittenhouse or the defendant?
I'm going to interject here. I do have a rule that is honored in the breach, as Chaucer wrote, that witnesses are to be addressed formally, so that there's no distinction between classes and races and that type of thing. Except I do permit an attorney representing the defendant to use a first name, because that would be the normal mode of address between a lawyer and a client. I would tell you that throughout this trial and every other, people slip into calling people by their first names, and if it's brought to my attention, then I discourage it or even stop it. But just so you know, it generally should be Mr. Rittenhouse and Mr. Rosenbaum, okay? Okay, thanks.
You testified that you observed Mr. Rittenhouse. You made a hand gesture. You characterized him as trying to de-escalate the situation. Is that right?
Yes.
Were you wearing your body cam when that happened?
Yes.
Do you have footage of that?
Yes.
Have we seen that yet?
It's been submitted to you guys.
Right, but was it played when you testified?
No.
You also characterized, there was a video that was played of the incident at the Ultimate gas station with Mr. Rosenbaum and the dumpster. Fair to say?
The flaming dumpster.
You were personally at that location when that all happened, correct?
Yes.
Was the defendant?
I cannot recall. I was not there. Or I can't recall he was there or not. Yes, I was there.
You never saw him at that scene, correct?
No.
You also mentioned that at one point you observed a fire at a mechanic shop. Do you
Yes.
remember where that was?
It was a couple blocks away from Sheraton. I don't remember exactly.
That was some tires
Yes.
that were on fire in the middle of that lot, correct?
Yes.
And you have no idea who started that fire?
No.
You're not here testifying that Mr. Rosenbaum started that fire?
No.
You're not here testifying that anyone else in this case started that fire, correct?
I have no idea who started that fire.
In the video that we played earlier, this is the video where you're walking down the street, you see the tipped over garbage can, the road, people lighting on fire, and then you start walking in the same direction as the defendant. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yes, Rosenbaum.
It was
Joseph Rosenbaum.
It was Rosenbaum furthest south on Sheridan, Mr. Rittenhouse, and then I don't know if you know this individual. There's a Richie McGinnis. Do you know who that is?
Yes.
And he was heading in that same direction between you and the defendant. Is that fair to say?
Yes, based upon the footage, yes.
And you're aware that there comes a time in the video that you made where the defendant starts to run. Do you remember that?
I didn't make any videos.
Recorded.
Yes.
There comes a time in the video you recorded in which you saw Mr. Rittenhouse start running. Is that fair to say?
After Joseph Rosenbaum was lighting a fire in the middle of the street, he had his face covered, and he stopped and started going towards car source 3, walking. And a couple seconds after, you see Kyle Rittenhouse walk past the frame with a fire extinguisher.
The question I was asking you, though, sir, is there comes a time after that where in your video Mr. Rittenhouse starts running towards that car source. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And Mr. McGinnis, who is between you and the defendant, also starts running.
Yes.
And you start running.
Yes.
Why?
Because the rioters were saying en route to car source, en route to car source, and someone yelled out either burn in hell or burn inside or burn it down. It's hard to make out. But they were clearly displaying riotous, arsonist behavior prior to that, and covering riots all of 2020. I could tell something violent was about to happen.
Such as an arson or a fire?
Possibly, yes.
What else could possibly have happened?
At the time, that's what I was thinking.
So you were mostly concerned about running to get there in time to cover what you thought was going to be a fire.
Yes.
Was your decision to start running based on you seeing the defendant start to run?
No.
So you just independently decided to run at that time?
I just told you, people were saying en route to car source. Someone said burn in hell, burn it down. And the prior nights, the rioters were burning down buildings in Kenosha.
The people that you quote as saying those things, they're walking down the middle of the road, weren't they?
Some were walking, yes.
The people that say those things don't start running at the same time you do they?
I couldn't tell who said it.
Did you, these people you're characterizing as arsonists, rioters, whatever language you're using, were any of them running towards the 63rd car source?
Some were way ahead of me, in front of me, so I wouldn't be able to tell.
So you didn't know whether those people way ahead of you were running or not?
No, it'd be too far to tell.
So I know you said you started running. What other people around you were running at that very moment? If you know.
Richie was in front of me, so I think Richie McGinnis was the one that started running, and then while we started hearing all of the noise and people saying burn it down, that's when I started to go run towards the car source.
So one of the factors in your decision to start running was the fact that you saw Mr. McGinnis start to run.
Yes, one of the factors.
And you post on Twitter, correct?
Yes.
And you have a Twitter name that is @Drew H Live.
Yes.
Is that right? And Drew H Live is your show that you have, or your website, correct?
Yes, on YouTube.
Okay. And you tweeted about this incident on the night of August 25th, didn't you?
Yes.
Shortly after everything happened.
Yes.
And you were talking about an armed citizen who opened fire on a rioter,
Yes.
right? And you characterized the rioters as planning to burn down the car dealership, correct?
Yes.
And it seems like you're suggesting then that the defendant, he's the armed citizen that you're referring to, right?
Yes.
That he is, in your opinion, took necessary action to stop these rioters. That's what your tweet is basically suggesting, right?
At the time, it appeared that he was attempting to protect the local business from violent rioters that had already displayed that behavior 2 nights prior.
So this is an example, and this is, by the way, this is at 11:35 p.m. on August 25th, 2020. I know you said you're from Arizona. Is it possible that this was Arizona time, so 2 hours behind us? Because the shootings hadn't happened here until about 11:50 p.m. So I'm wondering if that's why there might be a time difference. Do you know?
No, I posted that. Are you referring to the video of the shooting of Mr. Rosenbaum?
That's part of it, yes.
Okay, yeah. I posted that specific video maybe about 20 minutes after it happened, the original video.
And by that time, you had made a conclusion in your own mind that what the defendant did was the right thing. Fair to say?
I would have to take a look at the specific tweets to remember what I was saying and why I was saying it.
This is the tweet from 11:35 p.m. on August 25th, 2020, which in Kenosha would have been before the shooting actually occurred. And you say, it appears an armed citizen was defending the car dealership and opened fire on the rioter who was attempting to vandalize or burn the dealership down. Before the shooting took place, the rioters were planning to burn down their, quote, next car dealership, end quote. Do you remember that tweet?
Yes.
And that was shortly after this all happened.
Yes.
Now, you were also asked if you had observed various individuals that night, and you've told us about your observations of Joseph Rosenbaum. Fair?
Yes.
And have you showed us or talked about all of the observations or videos that you have with regard to Joseph Rosenbaum?
Yes.
Do you know if you have any that pertain to Gage Grosskreutz?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't know, or no, I don't.
No, I don't know. It's a lot of footage. I would have to go through a lot of footage. He might run through a frame randomly. So that's what I would say.
Can we pull up Exhibit 152, please? And we're going to play this at the 1 minute and 51 second mark. All right. Mr. Hernandez, are you able to see that okay?
Yes.
All right, can we play that, please? Pause. There is an individual who is crouching on the ground wearing a blue hat with what appears to be some white lettering on it. Do you see the person I'm talking about?
Yes.
Do you know who that is?
I do not right now off the top of my head.
Is there any disagreement that that's Gage Grosskreutz? And you were recording this because there's someone on the ground there that appears to be injured and is being treated by medics. Is that fair to say?
Yes, because they were rioting.
Okay. Let's go to exhibit number 153. Oh, Karen, are you okay? Do you need a tissue or anything? Okay. Let's go to exhibit 153 at the 40-second mark, please. Go ahead.
Pass!
Mr. Hernandez, is this video that you recorded on your body cam?
Yes.
And did you see something that was being shown in your direction?
Yes, a laser.
Where was that coming from?
I have no idea.
You recorded this video maybe a lot or two away, a house property away from the 59th Street car source, didn't you?
Yes.
And that's a laser coming from someone who was up on the roof of that car source, right?
Yes.
And you're holding up your press badge because you're worried that someone who's pointing that laser at you is also, at the same time, pointing a gun at you, correct?
Yes.
And that made you fearful for your safety, didn't it?
The context of this is the rioters had already attempted to get into spark some kind of confrontation. That's what I testified to earlier.
Sir,
So then they
sir,
went behind this
sir.
building and started throwing rocks at the people on top of the building.
You're,
Please listen to the question.
Okay.
my question was very simple. When that person on the roof is shining that laser pointer at you and you think that they're pointing a gun at you, that made you fear for your safety, didn't it? He didn't answer that.
Anybody question? What did you say?
Asked and answered. He said
Rule.
yes.
Do you recall the question?
Yes, because I didn't want to be misidentified as a rioter.
And you were fearful for your safety at that moment, weren't you?
I'm always fearful in the midst of riots.
Sir, at that moment, when that person on the roof is pointing a laser pointer at you and you think there's a gun pointed at you, you were fearful for your safety, weren't you?
Because I didn't want to get misidentified as a rioter.
Are you able to answer that question with a yes or a no?
I will say in fairness, I think the witness has answered it now.
Fair enough. I have no further questions.
A couple. Mr. Hernandez, do you believe that posting videos of what you saw was done to help Kyle?
No, because at the moment I posted all these videos on social media, I had no idea who Kyle Rittenhouse was or Joseph Rosenbaum the night of the riot.
And the purpose of posting the videos was what?
To report. I'm a journalist. I'm a reporter.
Mr. Binger had showed you a picture of or a video of the green laser thing.
Mm-hmm.
Any idea who did that?
I have no idea.
Nothing else.
Any question?
You say you're a journalist and a reporter?
Yes.
Earlier you identified yourself as a professional commentator.
All the above.
Is it your practice as a journalist to interject your personal opinion into the stories you're reporting on?
No.
But you did that here.
Where?
On August 25th, a few minutes after these shootings, you posted on Twitter your opinion as to whether the defendant in your mind was right or wrong in doing what he did, correct?
No, I said apparently at the beginning of that statement.
What effect does that have?
It means apparently. It doesn't mean that this is 100% my opinion.
You had already jumped to a conclusion, an apparent conclusion at that moment, right?
That's what apparently means.
But that's not what journalists do, right?
I don't know where we're headed here.
I'll be done. Thank you.
Okay, you may step down, sir.
Thank you.
I move exhibits 152 and 153 to evidence,
Objection.
No.
Received.
Your Honor, we're to the point, I think, where we need to get the information from Mr. Black and Armstrong. I believe my associate has emailed the updated report to your clerk, and once that's done, I think we're done. I do wish that all the pictures that Nathan DeBrune viewed be published to the jury. I never did that when I moved them into evidence.
You'll have to give the numbers you want to show to the
Okay.
jury,
I can find that.
but you can do that.
You can do black and white. You want just black and white for the Republic?
Thank you.
I don't think there's any difference. That's
Can I give those?
Yes.
to a place where you can play your videos again? Is that possible?
It is, but I'll just have to get set up. It'll take me a couple minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Black, since we talked earlier, you have provided us with a 7-page document that contains some information regarding the modifications that you made to some of these videos. Is that fair to say?
Specifically the two videos that you asked me about that we use as demonstrators. Yes, sir.
One of them was the video number 6. It's observation number 16 on your list. And this was one in which I had asked you earlier if you knew the source of it, and I believe you indicated at the time you didn't know where it came from.
I said I knew that I had it, I just didn't have the exact name.
Sure. Now that we've got some further information here, do you know where that came from?
Yes, sir, and that would be moving by my cursor, the video that is denoted as the N as in Nora de Bruin video -img files.mp4.
And that is Nathan de Bruin?
It's whatever that video says.
Okay. So you don't personally know if that was Nathan de Bruin or who it was, you just have it marked as a file name, basically.
I have it marked as how it was given to me.
Do you know when you got that video? Let me put it this way. Did you get that video since you prepared your preliminary report in July?
I don't know. I can take a look at my other items here and give you a good...
If you could, please.
The video itself would have been with the original discovery, which would have been the evidentiary items reviewed in my preliminary reports. The interview statements of Nathan de Bruin that would have coincided with it would have been in the secondary discovery, which would be in my supplemental report.
And with regard to this video, in the report you gave us since we last talked, it indicates here that you trimmed the video and it indicates you enhanced the levels. So you say you adjusted the contrast to 14.4 and the brightness to 175.1. Am I reading this correctly?
You are reading it correctly. However, if you take a look slightly forward in the report, these are matched estimated values post-production. In other words, I didn't capture it at the exact moment I was working on this and during the last time we talked, and I matched the levels consequently.
What do you mean you matched levels to what?
To the appearance of the video. In other words, what you're doing is you're adjusting contrast on one side of it, and if you want, I can show that to you.
No, you can
Okay,
just describe it.
that's fine. And you're adjusting brightness on the other. There are two slider items, so to speak.
Sure.
One slider goes up from 0 to whatever, the other goes down.
I think we've done this a lot on our own personal cell phones. What I'm wondering is, how did you arrive at those settings for contrast and brightness? What were you comparing them to, or where did you get that from?
The actual video.
So you had a raw video from the source, which had a certain contrast and brightness level?
The video that was given to me, yes, sir. I had a raw video with the...
And then when you did work on that video, you adjusted the contrast and the brightness on your work to try and match the original?
No.
I'm
Okay.
misunderstanding.
No, and I'm probably misspeaking. The process on this is I have a video. I cut out the piece I'm going to work on so I don't have it. It takes a lot of energy or computing power to work on it. It has that amount of frames. And then I process that piece. So that piece of video I run through, in this case, with some very just simple processes, which is I level adjust, which is just simply adjusting the brightness and the contrast to see if I can get more clarity out of it. And then from there, I like what the clarity looks like because I can see a preview of it. Okay, it looks like I can see a little bit more, do whatever. I then put it into a no audio track, as we already discussed earlier, an MP4 file, and I say, it'd be nice if this was a little bit slower so I can make more sense out of it, and I simply adjust the frame rate. If it was 60 and I wanted a little bit slower, maybe I'll start at a 10, maybe I'll go down to 6 until I can discern stuff. So that's what I'm describing. Big file original, raw. What was given to me is raw. Extract, same exact speed, no alterations, no nothing. Then the extract, levels enhanced, slowed, frame reduction.
So what I'm getting at is when you have that extract and you're enhancing the levels, you personally are adjusting the brightness and contrast in that extract.
That is absolutely correct.
And you're doing that because you're hoping that by making those adjustments, it'll make things in the video easier to see.
That's fair.
And with regard to the rest of the document you gave us since the last time you testified, you also indicate that you did a similar process with the BG on the scene or BG on the go video, which shows the second set of shootings. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say.
And again, with that, you adjusted the contrast and the brightness yourself.
Yes, sir.
And you did that because you were trying to make it so that things in that video were easier to see.
Also correct.
Okay. You played for us earlier that video on your computer, broadcast onto our TVs. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
And when you played it for us, you had it slowed down to a certain speed. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
I thought I heard you say earlier, and maybe I was wrong, I thought you said a quarter speed?
That's what I thought it was. It's actually, and let's make sure we're talking about the right video. Which video are you referring to?
The Brandon Gutenschwager or BG on the scene video. I think this is on the second or maybe third to last page of your most recent document.
Right, so that would be, if you take a look on the original starting out at approximately 60 frames per second, that would be, I guess, page 4. And then it goes from 60, reduced down to 7.5. So the math would be a little bit around 8, down to 1/8.
So the version that you played for us this morning, it was at 1/8 speed?
Approximately, yes.
And is that a new video file that you've created using your software?
When it actually changes the frame rate, it produces a different file from that.
That's
Yes.
what I'm asking.
Yes.
So do you have a file on your computer that is the BG on the scene video at 1/8 speed? Is that fair to say?
It's fair to say it's the BG on the scene video extract, the shortened version at 1/8 speed, or approximately 1/8 speed.
And that's what you played for us earlier?
Yes, sir.
So if we wanted to, for example, we could take that file, mark it as an exhibit, and introduce it into evidence in this case.
Yes, sir.
I would like to do that, Your Honor, with the defense permission.
I have no problem. I would ask that all the videos that he referred to be marked on a hard drive and put into evidence.
I assume that's not something you can do instantaneously. That'll take a little time for us to put them on a hard drive or something along those lines.
If you give me a hard drive, I can do it whatever instantaneous.
We can work on that afterwards. I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
When you were working with these videos, did you change anything other than the color and contrast? We've already talked about frame rate. Poor question, long day.
Right.
You changed the frame rate
Correct.
on some of them. You changed the color and contrast on some of them, correct?
Well, I didn't change the color. I changed the brightness.
Color. I'll ask it this way. Were any of the frames color added or subtracted?
No, sir.
Okay. When color is added by either the operator or the program, that's called interpolation.
It's a term, but yes.
And those are done through various different ways. Is that a fair statement?
That's fair.
Okay. One of them is bicubic.
That is a type of interpolation. Yes.
Okay. Can you name the types of interpolation?
I can name some of them, that especially the ones that this software allows me to be aware of or qualified in.
Go ahead.
The three of them would be, for example, nearest neighbor, bilinear, or bicubic are three specific types of interpolation or algorithms used. And that now, something that should be known about this is these are done primarily when enlargements are being done.
Okay. Now, nearest neighbor, it was the first one. The second one you said?
Bilinear,
Bilinear. And the third?
bicubic.
Does nearest neighbor change the color composition of something that's blown up or magnified?
No, what nearest neighbor does is it takes existing values within the frame already and uses those existing values to fill it out, so to speak. If I had something that was pitch black here, 100% black, and it said, hey, we need to get bigger, it would fill it out only using that color of black or white or whatever else happens to be within the frame.
Bilinear, does that add colors?
To some degree. In other words, if you had something that was, well, let's just use like a line of blue, and you had a line of red, there would be something that exists between the blue and the red value here that would not necessarily have been there before, so to speak.
So the computer, through its program, fills in the blank, so to speak.
Yes, sir.
Bicubic, does that add anything?
Yes, much in the same way as bilinear does, but the difference is, as it sounds, linear is more, think straight lines, and bicubic is if I had something in the middle, it would basically gradually go out to match the other color. So if you were to think about it like a progression, you would start here, and if I have so far to go to get here, it would take a little bit more of each of that color, so you'd have a much more seamless image. You'll get much less jaggedness to it, that type of thing.
And as you sit here today, is there any clip that you could take and just show by moving the bars, color and contrast, what happens? Not color, brightness and contrast, I believe.
Yeah, I can actually.
Could you demonstrate that for the jury? Take one of the standard clips.
And you just want the idea of brightness and contrast, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And I'm not going to change any frame rates, just show it as is?
Correct.
Okay. So what you can see on the screen is these two sliders up here. And I'm going to go down to a place that's got a little bit of something in it. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this in that direction, and you'll notice it lightens up. If I were to keep sliding in that direction, it lightens up some more. If I wanted to get a little bit more contrast to it, and then as Mr. Binger has already described, I move them around to a place where I can get hopefully a little better understanding or clarity. And
So what you just did on the slide on the top of the screen, that was doing both of those manipulations?
yes, sir. One from one side, one from the other. Those are the two values in the report.
And so basically what you've done is taken a video that is dark and unrecognizable and turned it into something that's useful.
Yes, sir.
And you haven't added anything to it?
No, I haven't added anything to it, nor has the computer added anything to it. There's no interpolation being done with this other than the lightening and the algorithm for the lightening and the contrast, but there's no additional pixels being added. I'm not affecting the pixel count.
And you did that on some of the videos that we've shown this jury previously?
The two videos that have been demonstrated to this jury that I worked on, that I did the clips from, this is all that I did. There was other videos worked on that I did do enlargement and these type of things. They were done by nearest neighbor lossless. As far as I know, they have not been presented to this jury.
Understood. Thank you, Doctor.
Yes, sir.
You may sit down.
Thank you, sir.
There's some housekeeping matters and
About 10, 15 minutes. So please don't talk about the case during the break.
Dr. Black's CV and evidence. And I,
Make your offer. You can talk about it now so that we can tell whether there'll be an objection. But make the motion in front of the jury, because when I give the instructions, I'll tell them that they're only to consider things which have been received.
okay. I would make Dr. Black's CV, and I would submit Exhibit 142, the timesheet. And I know that Mr. Binger has objections to that, and I would have that changed to use the method that I use to identify them, but the times would still be the same.
I don't have an objection to the CD. At this point, I'm not in a position to comment on 142 until I see the final version.
All right. What else?
At that point, we would rest.
Is there to be a rebuttal case?
Yes.
How long?
Well, we have one witness simply to verify two photos. That is what the defense wanted the report on. The length really depends on how long the defense wants to cross. I have like 3 minutes of questions.
I didn't hear the last thing you said.
I probably have about 3 to 5 minutes of questions for him. Based on the information I know now, I don't know.
Okay. Well, let's have them have their break. Then we'll come in and take care of that. You ready with your witness?
He's here. The defense had asked for these reports. I don't know how long they want to review them. He brought reports for almost everything he did. I think they're mostly interested in just the two most recent things. If there's going to be a fight over this, I'd prefer to have that fight before he testifies. So I guess I just don't know how long the defense wishes to review these documents they requested this morning.
Well, why don't you give them, or if you have not already, give them the material now. They can look at it, and is there going to be a need for a lengthy delay?
I don't think so.
Okay. Let's aim to start at 1:45, and then perhaps we'll be done with evidence by 3:15 or so, and then we can start talking about verdicts and instructions, and go to the jury tomorrow.
Well, can we discuss that in more detail after the break, Your Honor? The timing?
I mean, my thoughts are there's been a lot of evidence. A lot of people are real tired. I spoke to Mr. Pinger, and miraculously we agree. We'd rather do it on Monday.
Sam, I would like to start another jury on Monday, number one. Number two, where the jurors are here, and they've been here. It's a long trial, and
Saturday? Oh, I see that's worse than Monday.
I didn't hear you.
I said I see that's worse than Monday. Whatever the court says, I'll make myself available.
I'm just not sure, Your Honor. The way we're headed right now, it's going to be, 1:45 by the time we come back. I don't think we're going to be in a position to give them any jury instructions today.
I wouldn't instruct them today.
Sure. So, best case scenario, I think we're looking at beginning instructions tomorrow morning, first thing, and then closings, which I think that process between the two of those things could take us well into the afternoon tomorrow. And then we're starting deliberations at 3 or 4 on a Friday afternoon. I think that's less than ideal.
Well, the alternative is to send them home until Monday, and then we'll have the same issue. We'll have the instruction and the argument on Monday.
I think having them come back, if they need to deliberate further on Monday and into Tuesday, is, I think, preferential to having them deliberate Friday evening into a Saturday.
All right. Tentatively, I'll say yes now until I go back and have buyer's remorse. But let's finish up, and then I will want to talk about instructions somewhat today and verdicts. Okay.
Thank you.
1:45.
Mr. Armstrong outside the presence.
Wait.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, we're back, and what's up?
There's some questions. Well, the defense has some questions about the methods which these exhibits were created.
Okay.
Instead of having the jury come in for 2 minutes and leaving immediately because there's going to be some dispute over them, Attorney Chirofisi suggested maybe questioning the witness about the methods beforehand, and then we can redo it on direct if need be. But then perhaps we can just do the witness and not have another break in 5 minutes.
I'm sorry. I didn't. I'd like to give myself more credit than this, but you have to start over.
So just as with the last witness, there's questions about the use of this video software.
Right.
The defense, I think, has some questions that may lead to them objecting to the evidence coming in.
Okay.
So Attorney Chirofisi suggested maybe we I guess, ordeer the witness ahead of time, just to see if there's any issues, so that if there is an issue that arises, it won't be 5 minutes after the jury comes in. Because I expect this to be a very brief witness.
Makes perfect sense to me.
Excellent.
All right.
Then the jury would be brought once.
Who the voir dire, then the jury come down, and then
I rest.
Then you rest. Then the state will do its rebuttal, and
I would move the two exhibits into evidence in the presence of the jury, and then arrest.
correctamundo.
I'm just going to set this up if that's okay, Judge.
Yep.
Only that the
So, Mr. Armstrong, you had provided to Mr. Krause this afternoon kind of the, I don't want to say the notes, but the work that you had done in terms of the images that you had blown up at his request. Is that, I know it's a rough way to say it, but is that fair?
It is fair, yes.
Okay. And I don't know if you have the report with you, but if you do, could you just turn to page 7 to make sure I'm on the right path?
We're speaking to the clarified files, correct?
Yeah, the ones that you had done in reference to the latest, I think, 8 photos that were asked to be enlarged.
Is that page 7, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay, gotcha.
So, on the top of that page it says chain. Is that fair?
That is fair, yes.
And then, as we move down, there's a portion or a headline or a title in bold that says interpolation, right? You see that?
No, I'm not seeing it.
Let me see what you got.
That's what I have. Page 6. Oops. Page 7.
maybe this
Sorry.
helps. I'm
Yep.
asking that does the R20,
2992, yes.
does that help? Okay.
One moment, please. Sorry, I need to see, may I see what you're referring to again?
You want me to keep this here?
Yes, that'd be great. Thank you. Sorry, I'm there. Thank you.
So it says in bold interpolation, right?
Yes,
And then next to that it says bicubic.
that's correct.
Okay, and what does that mean?
Means that the interpolation algorithm that was selected was bicubic.
Are there other interpolation methods that you could use?
There is, yes.
And what are some of those?
For example, nearest neighbor is one. Bicubic, bilinear.
And can I just ask you to do this so we understand this? The photo that you enlarged at the state's request, how much, is it pixels that you expand? What do you do to make it bigger?
It's based off of the enlargement is the interpolation that is used. So with regards to this references a video that was interpolated and outputted. Are you speaking to, I'm sorry, are you speaking to the photo?
Yeah, speaking to photo, what number is it?
It's the 1 of 8. You want to show it to him?
So this is been marked as States 155. I'm going to add specifically about that one.
Okay.
Okay. So you have taken a still of a video and you have zoomed in on it, for lack of a better term.
I would not say zoom. I would say it's been enlarged.
Okay. And how do you do that?
We use a algorithm, bicubic algorithm, for that. For this particular, are you referring to both images or just one?
They're both the same, right?
This one was used with a smart resize algorithm, and then this one is used with bicubic.
I'm sorry, you said this one was smart size?
Smart resize.
And what is that?
That is a algorithm that is part of the AND5 software that resizes that image.
So, I don't know if this is going to be, it's easier for me to do it this way, and I don't know if the court, it'll be easier for the court, but in my, tell me if this is right, can you just turn and take a peek for a second?
Yes.
Okay, so, when you are making things in large, right, you are you adding pixels?
Yes, I am adding pixels.
Okay, and so, tell me if this is bicubic and interpolation, okay? And I know this will be rudimentary, but forgive me. So if these are pixels, R is going to stand for red, okay? And these are red. And these are pixels, and these are blue. When you enlarge an image, what does the bicubic algorithm do to these pixels?
The bicubic algorithm is taking those pixels and resampling, or I'm sorry, is basically duplicating those pixels into another area. Beyond that, I cannot say.
Do you know, based on your training and experience, what color the bicubic algorithm makes these pixels?
I do not know.
Do you know if we know this is a red pixel, and we know this is a blue pixel, and those are real colors, will it combine these two pixel colors to actually change the color of the image? You know what I'm saying?
I can't speak to that.
So you can't.
Yeah, I want to be clear. Listen, the unassigned ones that you have in the middle.
Yeah.
Those are the added ones.
Yes.
Okay.
So the added pixels, and what, to be fair, in terms of what we're looking for, to make sure it's the color's correct, that we're not distorting the color of the thing we're looking at, it's adding pixels, and my concern or my question for you is it adding the correct color of the original image?
That goes beyond into the algorithm of the program that I do not have that information for.
Okay, so if I can ask you this. These two photographs that you have enlarged, okay, so you've added pixels to those, right?
Correct.
Okay. And are you able to tell the court the colors that were there originally are actually the same colors when I expand or enlarge the photograph with the added pixels? Are you able to say that?
I'm not able to say that, no.
So tell me if I'm right. So the things that the court would be looking at here, and the colors that the court would be looking at, you can't tell the court that in fact that's the color from the original picture, correct?
It comes down to the programming, the algorithm. I cannot say it.
Can I just say 1 second here? My last couple questions for you, sir. Could you have used another algorithm that wouldn't have changed the potential color of the pixels that you added?
There's no testimony that the color has been changed.
I didn't hear you.
There's been no testimony that the color has been changed.
It was my impression, and I beg your correction. It was my impression that in the effort to enlarge the image, that the individual is inserting some, I'm going to call them uncharged pixels, that the algorithm is going to assign colors, which is beyond his control. Where am I going wrong?
My question was, could he have used a different algorithm?
No, I'm not. You're past me. I'm just trying to understand if I've got the basic concept down.
Yeah, my understanding was it was beyond his scope of his expertise
I
to
heard
say the
No,
expanded
I'm back, way back.
Oh. All right.
I'm still using watercolors. He is enlarging. He wants to enlarge the image, and he's inserting some pixels in there. And so he gives it a command to insert the pixels, and he doesn't know what color they're going to come up. Is that it? Is that it, sir?
I would say, Your Honor, it's as to how that algorithm interpolates those pixels and where it places them goes outside the scope of my knowledge.
Well, what do you, I mean no disrespect, what do you know?
What I do know is that the process that I use to expand or enlarge this image and the interpolation method that was used. Anything beyond that within my software, with the software I use, I do not have any additional information.
And competing programs might insert different colors.
It's possible.
And you wouldn't have any way of knowing.
I do not have any way to know if those different interpolation methods would issue different colors to different pixels.
Now, what were you telling me?
What I had asked him was, I wasn't telling you anything. What I asked a question that was objected to, which was there another method that could have been used? Which, and I think the wording that I had said was, wouldn't have changed the pixel colors, which if I drew the objection.
And what was the objection?
The objection, there's not testimony that any colors were changed.
How would he know?
He may or may not, but the way he asked it is assuming that colors changed.
I'm happy to rephrase it.
Go ahead.
Is there another interpolation type of program that you're aware of that when pixels are expanded would keep the color constant through the expansion?
I cannot speak to that.
Would you agree the more pixels that you add, the more interpolation happens?
Yes.
So the question that I have, and that the argument is when you expand the photograph, you're adding pixels, but you can't tell the court what color is being added, if any.
I cannot speak to that. No, that comes down to the programming the algorithm on the software.
So the original still has colors and pixels. It's expanded. Those pixels expand. The question is, do the colors stay constant?
I do not know.
Judge, that's all I have.
Mr. Armstrong, is the software you use similar to the Input Ace software?
It's similar.
So the same algorithms and methods, as far as you know, are also in that software?
It's both softwares are made by two different manufacturers. I can't comment on whether they're the same.
So when you enlarge these images, are you changing any details?
I'm not changing any details.
What are you doing?
We are simply just adding pixels to make the image larger.
Because when you're looking at a smaller image on the screen, let's say it's 20 by 30 pixels. In order to enlarge that, there need to be more than 20 or 20 by 30 pixels, or else it would stay the same size.
That's correct.
So you didn't witness this, but the defense expert was zooming in on video with his Input Ace software. Would that also be adding pixels because it was enlarging it?
It's irrelevant for purposes of what his testimony would be.
I'm trying to let the court understand. I mean,
I beg pardon?
I'm trying to get an understanding of how this works. Versus
go ahead.
You may answer if you can.
I do not know as to Input Ace and how their interpolation for, if any, is seen by zooming in on there.
So when you talk about adding pixels, the only way to enlarge an image is to add pixels.
Correct.
Now, you don't go in and say, put in black pixels, put in blue pixels, or anything like that.
That is correct. I do not.
The software program does that.
That is correct.
And it has to do that to actually make an image larger.
That is correct.
Now, is this, the defense expert called AMP5 the gold standard of video editing? Is it one of the best programs out there?
It is a program that we use at the lab, yes.
Now, is it an accepted program? I'm sorry?
You asked him who was the best one, and he responded, that's what we use at the lab. That's not the same thing. Or it doesn't establish that it is in fact the best.
I understand.
I can tell you, not everything the state supplies is top-notch. And I'm not talking about the judges, by the way. I said not everything the state supplies is top-notch.
So, is this the same process as when you hit like full screen on your computer?
No.
Now, this AMP5 software has an algorithm in it.
And it was speaking to exactly.
When you interpolate, there's an algorithm that fills in the image so that you can actually see it, so that it's magnified.
When you are dealing with looking at it from a preview, it uses its own nearest neighbor, but it does not add pixels in that preview.
So these processes you use, are these the standards used in the forensic imaging that you do?
Yes.
And this is the kind of software that you are trained on?
Yes.
And this is an accepted software program in forensic imaging?
Yes.
And it is these are accepted procedures in forensic imaging?
Yes.
And that's all. Thank you.
So, here's my question. The photograph that we're talking about to be admitted into evidence to have people look at it.
Yes.
Can you say that image didn't add colors into pixels that weren't there originally?
I cannot definitively say that because I did not write the software program.
So it's possible when you enlarge an image and add pixels that you're adding colors that weren't there in the original photograph, correct?
I do not know.
And when you said nearest neighbor, nearest neighbor, if I'm right, tell me. What color goes in here on a nearest neighbor?
It utilizes, I'm sorry, I do not know.
Would it become purple?
It's possible.
And purple is nowhere on here, is it?
That is correct.
Nothing else.
Hey.
In order to answer Attorney Trofsky's questions, would you have needed to written the algorithm in the software program?
I would need to, yes, to see exactly how those programs are interpolating those pixels.
Do you ever check the enlarged image against the original image and see if there are consistencies?
Yes, we can certainly compare the original to the enhanced version.
And is your work, and were these images and your work on these images peer reviewed by another forensic imaging specialist?
Yes, that's correct.
Nothing further.
Judge, on that, I have a motion, but I don't have anything else to ask.
You can step down, sir.
Judge, based on his testimony, so what the state is trying to do is introduce a photograph that has been enlarged where this person, Mr. Armstrong, cannot testify that in fact colors weren't added that weren't there originally. And the photograph I'm going to tell the court that the photograph that the state intends to offer, I believe they will be arguing, shows Mr. Rittenhouse doing something with his firearm. If it is not the same as the original and colors were added to that, that is a distortion of what in fact the original photograph was. It should not be admitted because it's not relevant if he can't testify. There's been no appropriate foundation that in fact it should be admitted if he can't testify that it didn't add colors. That colors that originally weren't there still aren't there. And I think under the circumstances, based on the evidence that you've heard today, you should not admit those photographs because they are not what I would consider to be mirror images of what the original photograph was.
Judge, all due respect to Your Honor, I think the defense is trying to take advantage of your lack of knowledge about technology, which you've expressed. With the defense argument, you could never have an enlarged digital picture. All of Nathan, and I understand we didn't object to them, but all of Nathan DeBruin's pictures that he brought in on his own on these prints are enlarged digital images. If the defense is now trying to argue that enlarged digital images are not reliable, I mean, it's first of all hypocritical, but second of all, this is just not the age we're in. We are in an age where software is able to enlarge and do things. And yes, this image, we believe, although blurry because of the enlargement, does show, in rebuttal to Mr. Rittenhouse's testimony, does show him pointing his gun at individuals just before Mr. Rosenbaum chases him. The defense, this is clear in the drone video. We pointed it out in the drone video. The defendant denied it. This is an enlargement of that drone video so that we can see a better picture of it. This whole canard of adding pixels and changing color is a dishonest argument, and I believe the defense knows that. Their expert used a very similar software to zoom in and edit and change things, because if these things are reliable, and they are reliable, and this is what is used by by forensic imaging, forensic scientists, it's the industry standard. So if we're going to say that no technology can be brought in, no enlarged images can ever be brought in, that is a ridiculous standard. And we've heard from two experts now about how these algorithms are used and what they do. And simply because this evidence may be not beneficial to their client, and in fact show their client is lying, they're stupid at this level to try and keep it out. And to me, I think making a dishonest argument based on a number of forensic scientists that have emailed me to discuss this issue with the Apple zooming, which I think was also a very similarly, I don't want to say dishonest, but inaccurate argument, simply trying to keep out these enlarged or cleaned up images that show that their client is lying. He pointed a gun before Joseph Rosenbaum chased him. And this is a rebuttal. This is rebuttal evidence. This is based on someone trained in this area who uses software that is certified in this area. He's trained in this area. This is what these forensic image specialists do. And it's peer-reviewed by other forensic images, which, frankly, Dr. Black's was not. And so this is actually a much higher standard than the evidence that Dr. Black got in. I understand we didn't object. But for them to have an expert come in, use a very similar software to do similar things, and then try to pretend this is all voodoo magic is preposterous. And
well, wait a minute. A couple of things. Number one, you know, this happens sometimes. Lawyers sit there during the trial and all kinds of stuff comes in and out, and there's no objection raised. And then when there is an objection raised, the party says, well, this went on before in the trial and it was admitted. And I think, okay, but there wasn't an objection. So it was never scrutinized by the court. It just came in. That's number one. Number two, you're the proponent of the evidence. You have the burden of proof. They don't have to disprove the accuracy of it. You have to prove it. Number 3, the witness was just here, and when he's asked, what does it depict in terms of whether the color is going to change or to what color, he says, I don't know. Now, this is the person who is providing your information to support your claim that it is an accurate depiction. I will tell you that I totally agree with your comment about my lack of familiarity with these concepts. Although logic, I have some logical skills, and when you start adding, if I take this piece of paper and I start drawing squares on it, and and then I decide I'm going to put it on a bigger piece of paper, and I want to expand them, but I do it by creating even more squares, and I don't know what's going to go into those other squares. I mean, this is difficult a concept for me, yes.
I understand.
You know, the fact that I can blow something up on my phone and that it's accurate on my phone doesn't mean that the particular program used by the crime lab is doing an accurate job of increasing the size of the image.
Well, this is an accredited lab using software.
What does that mean to me? What does that mean to me? What does peer-reviewed mean to me? If you haven't presented any evidence as to the science or as to the algorithm that's involved,
Judge.
No, I want to see the images.
Okay.
Let's take a look. Not that my naked eye is going to be necessarily capable of making the distinction that I need to make, but you've got the burden here, so you
I understand.
present the images. I'll take a look at them.
Would you like them on the printed out paper, or would you like them on the screen? We have two of them marked, or we can put them on the
let's have a
screen.
look. Show me the paper.
Where's the other one?
Should be on the witness.
Yeah, you better put them up. I can't make anything out of these at all.
Can you please put up the first exhibit?
Judge, would you like to look at them on the screen?
Actually, I've had the best success looking at this one. Now, what is this depicting?
Judge, this is an image from the drone video. It's the exact area where Mr. Rittenhouse looked and denied that that is him holding his weapon, pointing it at the Zeminskis.
Okay, now you tell me, where's Zeminski? Where's the defendant?
Zeminski is off screen because we asked it to be cropped.
I beg your pardon?
Zeminski is, I believe, off screen. The defendant is right under the sign, right in front of what would be the pole holding up the sign. And right next to him is the fire extinguisher that, as opposed to his actual testimony, is seen on the drone video gently placing on the ground. He then immediately raises up and raises his firearm and points it at the Zeminskis. The defendant denied this even after watching the drone video. This is a blown up image. Obviously it's blurry because it is blown up, but you can see the black firearm being held in his two hands, albeit it is blurry. And if you'd like to see the video where this came from, we can show that to you as well.
Let's have that up.
Have that up?
Yep.
Number 82, please.
Ryan, 82.
Judge, if you look in that area of that, it's clear on the 4K TV, which is why I believe the defense brought that in.
Clear what?
It's clear on the 4K TV, which is the one the defense brought in, but the area where that enhances is as the video begins.
Turn it this way.
As the video begins, if you look under that sign, you will see the defendant step into view. He gently places his fire extinguisher on the ground. And then he raises up and points his weapon at the Zeminskis, who I believe you can see once this light, traffic light's out of the way. You play it, Brian? Please do it one more time, Mr. Stute. The defendant places the fire extinguisher down, and he raises his weapon and points it at the. He's pointing it right now, right here. He's still pointing it at them. Do it again, please.
Back to the beginning.
He hasn't pointed at them until Mr. Rosenbaum is done.
Do it again.
Right there, he drops it and he runs.
Run it again, please.
One more time, please.
All right, well, I think what I'm going to do is allow it, and that is subject to the witness is going to be cross-examined in front of the jury, and they'll have to make up their own decision.
Judge, I know the defense is going to rest, and then we will call a rebuttal witness. We were just made aware of a couple issues with the defendant's testimony. We believe we could potentially get a witness here this afternoon to rebut it. We were just made aware of it. So we may, at the end of this, be asking to keep rebuttal open.
Till when?
Well, we're working to see if we can get a witness. It'd be a person from the Grays Lake Police Department to rebut the fact that Mr. Rittenhouse was issued a bulletproof vest by them. They indicate they did not issue him one. Also, I can't imagine we find someone, but the Arizona State or whatever university the defendant claims to be attending says he is not enrolled there and is not going to college there. I don't imagine we can get a witness for that, but we, of course, will work on that.
You can open his webpage, his student webpage. So,
Well, I'm not going to cut off their right to
yeah.
rebuttal. All right, are we ready for the jury?
Yes.
Okay. Would you come down, please?
Yes.
Move it, please.
Yeah, they were using them. You could just put them right on the top of the Elmo in case they need them.
Continue.
At this time, the defense would move into Exhibit 142 and 140, and we would rest.
All right, any objection to 142 and 140?
Subject to final review of 142, no.
All right, received. Did you wish to present rebuttal?
Yes, the state would call James Armstrong to the stand.
You're still under oath.
Welcome back, Mr. Armstrong.
Thank you.
You testified a few days ago about some videos from a drone footage that were entered into evidence.
Yes.
Did you do any additional work on that drone footage?
Yes, it was requested that I enhance a person near a vehicle underneath a sign.
And how did you go about doing that?
I took two different approaches. The first one, I frame averaged, which means that I selected a group of frames. From there, frame average. From there, I frame averaged those, stabilized first, then frame average. From there, went through and clarified it, which just means that with using levels, we just brightened it up, and then enlarged it.
And These practices you talked about, are these standards in the forensic imaging world?
They are, yes.
And so are these accepted practices in forensic imaging?
They are.
The software you used, is it accepted software program in forensic imaging?
Yes.
And was your work on these images did it go through the peer review process?
It went through a peer review process by another qualified analyst.
And did you write this software?
I did not write this software.
And this enlargement, does it use any kind of computer programs or systems to make the enlargement?
Yes, it uses an algorithm to enlarge that image.
And what kind of process or algorithm was used for the image with the individual under the sign?
For the image underneath the sign, the image that is on towards the left, a smart resize, and then the image on the right was bicubic.
And are these accepted procedures in forensic imaging?
Yes. Yes, that's correct.
And did you write the algorithms that do these procedures?
I did not, no.
So do you know the actual specifics of how the algorithms work?
I do not, no.
But they're part of a software program that is accepted in use in forensic imaging.
Yes, that is correct.
It is, but I don't know that he's going to get the witness to grasp an answer that he wouldn't otherwise make, so the objection's overruled.
What is the software that you used?
It is called Amped 5.
We've heard some testimony today about a software program called Input Ace. Is that a similar software program, to the best of your knowledge, to Amped 5?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
To the best of your knowledge, did the crime lab have to choose between those two as to which software they would use?
Yes, the Amped 5 was chosen.
Were you part of that process?
I was only part of the process of making the recommendation.
Is that what you recommended?
That was my choice, yes.
Sorry? Relevance. It's relevant.
That was my choice. Overruled.
I think you said it was your choice.
It was my recommendation to our technical unit leader It was my recommendation to our technical unit leader for my preference of software between the two.
I'd like to show you what's marked as States Exhibit 155. Do you recognize this?
Yes, that appears to be the report print that I created. A report print.
And this report print has two images on it?
That is correct.
And is it a true and accurate representation of the report you created?
It appears to be so, yes.
And you said there were some differences between the algorithms used on the images?
Yes, that is correct.
And what is the difference?
The difference being is that with regards to the clarification techniques on the image on the left, that was frame averaging. The image on the right, the difference being is that just a single frame was used.
And I put a piece of paper down in front of you. Do you mind flipping that over? What's the number on top of that one?
Exhibit S156.
Do you recognize that?
Yes, that is report print number 2.
And what is report print number 2?
Report print number 2 is clarified and enlarged files or images that I produced.
And where were where were you looking to enhance these images from?
We were looking to enhance the the area where two individuals are observed.
And so this is a different part of the drone video than the first exhibit.
That is correct.
What did you do to produce these images?
To produce these images, I just, again, clarified. So I use levels to brighten it up, and then also to enlarge as well.
And all the procedures you used standard and accepted in forensic imaging?
Yes, that is correct.
You actually created 6 more reports as well?
Correct, yes.
And just to not go through every one, were they all created with standards of forensic imaging?
Yes, that is correct.
You reviewed them and you know that the ones that the state's submitting are the ones that you submitted to us?
That is correct.
At this point, I would like to move all 8 into evidence and publish 155 and 156 to the jury.
Subject to my previous objection.
All right. Well, they're admitted subject to the cross-examination.
So can I publish them?
Not yet.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Judge, I'm going to use this. You can't see this, can you?
I can partially see it.
All right, I just want to make sure that members of the jury can, okay?
Understood.
So, in terms of your enlarging this image, from the information that's been provided to us, you did that through a bicubic interpolation program. Is that right?
I provided that through a smart resize and also bicubic, depending upon the image that you're referring to.
Okay, and when you're making the image larger, you're adding pixels to that image. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. So my question to you, in terms of your work on this, is in a situation where each individual pixel, you'd agree, has a color, if there's color involved, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so if these pixels are blue, and we know from the original that these pixels are red, when you're expanding the image, you're adding pixels, correct?
You are adding pixels, yes.
You don't know, when you're adding and enlarging that and adding pixels, you don't know what color you're adding to these pixels. Is that right?
I do not know the interpolation, the algorithm what it exactly is doing when it's adding those pixels.
There are programs, if I'm right, are there programs that would just default it blue, even though it might not be?
I do not know.
Do you know if there's programs that would take the blue pixel and the red pixel, combine them, and make a color purple when it's actually not purple?
I do not know.
Does it change? So here's the question I have for you. So if you take a picture of me right here and you expand it and blow it up, it's going to add pixels, so it might change. The pixels could become white for the color of my shirt or black for the color of my tie, correct?
It's going to be sampling the pixels that from your example,
Yeah.
and and calculating those pixels out, and then duplicating those pixels into that image.
Can you do that again? What was your answer?
I'm sorry, could you repeat your question?
I'll try. So what we're doing here, what you've done is you've taken a still photograph, right?
Yes.
You've blown it up and added pixels to that photograph.
That is correct.
Okay. Those pixels have to contain or do contain information, right?
That is correct.
Some of that information is color, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so if the best example I would give you is if you take a picture of my chest, my shirt, and you blow it up, you're going to be adding pixels around my shirt and my tie, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so the question is this. In terms of the accuracy of that enlarged image, you don't know whether those pixels are black for my tie or white for my shirt, right?
I cannot speak to the algorithm that's being used and how it's interpreting it.
And that, to be fair, that could distort or not make an accurate picture of what we're seeing, right?
It's possible.
Right. So the images, and when we're looking at smaller images that are blown up, adding color that's not actually there can make the photograph not accurate, right?
But all the steps that were taken are repeatable.
So what does that have to do with the fact that you don't know what the colors are added? You don't know the colors that are added, so how do you know that's accurate?
I do not know to the algorithm and how it's using it.
So when we're doing that on small images, like a marker in my hand or something like that, and you want to see what this is from a far distance away, it might be adding color that's not actually there, right?
It may be.
So the image that we're asking people to look at might not actually be an accurate representation of the original image. True?
It's possible.
Would it take something that was present? So the example I gave you was my tie.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you expand that, is it going to add more black pixels?
It will add, no, it will not add any more detail than what is originally there.
But it's going to add pixels, you just don't know what color they're going to be.
Correct.
Is it more difficult to do that in situations where you're further away, meaning the distance from the photograph? The further the distance from the photograph, the more difficult it is, or the more pixels that need to be added to blow it up, right?
You're saying more distant from the photograph, you mean the object depicted?
Yep. Sorry, yep. So the object depicted in the photograph, the further away that is, the more pixels need to be added when you enlarge it, right?
Correct, if you wanted to enlarge it, yes.
And the more pixels that are added, the more availability there is for distortion in terms of the color in those pixels, correct?
In terms of the color, it's possible.
And would that be also true? Would that be true for the size? I think I asked you this, but I'm trying to figure this out. The size of the image that you're trying to make larger. So the bigger the image in the photograph, the easier it is to enlarge.
There's more information. There's more pixels that are present to enlarge in that area.
Okay. So if I, for example, was if I had something on my clothing and you enlarged it, would that make the thing on my clothing more pronounced?
It may not, no.
Would it make it less pronounced?
It may not.
It may keep it the same even though the photograph is bigger?
It does not, interpolation does not add detail. So if you are enlarging something on your clothing, all it's doing is making that image larger. The detail that may or may not be there is not added. You're not adding additional detail to that image.
You're just adding unknown information.
Yes. No, you're not adding unknown information. You're adding, you're interpolating those pixels, and you're adding those particular pixels.
Right, and those pixels contain information.
Yes.
And that information contains color.
Yes.
And you're not sure whether or not how that color scheme works in that situation, right?
I do not know.
Okay. Sir, thanks for your time.
Mr. Kraus?
Do these programs add detail?
These programs do not add detail.
And how long did you work with this drone video, all told?
All told, I received it on Sunday, and I finished all my work with regards to these requests as of yesterday.
So you worked on it for more than 3 days?
Correct.
Would you have submitted a exhibit that did not seem to be consistent with the original footage?
Objection, argumentative. And foundational.
It is argumentative.
Did you make sure that if the reports that you identified were not consistent with the drone footage that you become familiar with, would you have produced them?
I would not have produced them if there was any information in there that did not seem accurate to me.
So you do compare it to the original?
I did not compare it to the original in this instance, no.
And what is this sampling that you talk about?
The bicubic and smart resize.
Yes.
Those are two different algorithms that use to interpolate that information.
So do these algorithms look at, so let me ask this way. On a digital photograph, to make it bigger, do you have to add pixels?
You do have to add pixels, yes.
So if I take a photo from my phone and I want it on a 5x7, I'd be adding pixels to it.
You would be.
So this is something that's commonly done to photographs.
It is, yes.
Now, these algorithms, how do they know, to the best of your knowledge, how to add the pixels?
To my best of my knowledge, it depends on the algorithm, and that's the extent of my expertise on that.
So what is the sampling process?
The sampling process is looking at the pixels and providing more data to that file.
So it looks at the pixels and looks at what's around it, and that's how it adds the pixels.
That is correct.
So it's not just arbitrarily choosing colors to put in.
Not to my knowledge.
Nothing further. Thank you.
Sir, you never compared the photograph in front of you to the original? That's what you testified to?
I did not compare the original. I did my analysis on that original video, but I didn't compare them side by side. No.
Well, you were asked you wouldn't submit it if you didn't think it was a fair and accurate representation and all that other stuff, right?
Right.
But you never looked at the two of them next to each other to confirm that, right?
To confirm that, to compare the original to the exported file, no.
And I know Mr. Krause talked about, you take a photograph of your family or whatever and you make it bigger. Right? You're probably not as concerned in a family photograph that you're adding pixels and where colors are going as you might be in, for example, say, a homicide investigation, right?
That is true.
Okay. So making sure that the information that's added to these pictures, and the information is in the pixels, making sure that's accurate, that's an important part of your responsibilities, correct?
That would be, yes.
And you don't know how that happens in this particular case, correct?
I do not know the algorithm that's being used within the software to speak to that, no.
That's all I have, Judge.
Any question?
How do you know that the interpolation is accurate?
Just based off the fact that it's a bicubic algorithm is a common algorithm that is used, and it's a sound forensic tool within AMP5.
And how long did you work with this drone video and the different images from it?
It's been asked and answered.
Yes, sustained.
Do you know how many hours you worked on it?
I would say it was approximately approximately 20 hours.
Nothing further.
Question?
I don't.
You may step down, sir.
We have no further rebuttal witnesses.
Any other evidence?
Judge, I would move that the exhibits be accepted and published as previously requested.
Any objection?
The same objection that I noted.
All right. It'll be received and published. Did you have some for publication too, or was that done? That was completed?
Yes.
Okay. All right then. Folks, the evidence is closed, and I'm going to ask that you return to my... Yes, you do. Go ahead.
Can we get the screens on?
Did you... Hey.
This is exhibit 155. And now please exhibit 156. Claim it. All right, that's all. Thank you, Judge.
All right. All right, folks, the evidence is closed. And well, you know what? I want to talk to lawyers for a moment. I guess I'll ask you to step into the library for just a second. And please don't talk about the case. All right, now you have driven me into submission with your request to argue on Monday, but I'm going to extract something in exchange, which is a cap on the length of your arguments. I figure, well, first of all, just we're going to do a more involved discussion on instructions and verdicts. Are there going to be any charges submitted to the jury other than what is in the information? Yes?
The state will ask for that, yes.
How many additional charges are you going to submit? Or request to submit?
I'm not sure if we finalized our request. Certainly, on count 3 and 4, I think we could discuss on other counts, but the first-degree homicide, first-degree intentional homicide, we will ask for all lesser includeds. The attempted homicide to engage gross rights, we would ask for I believe there's only one lesser included. We are not inclined to ask for lesser includeds on the reckless endangering safety charges. At this moment, we're not inclined to ask for lesser includeds on count 1 to Mr. Rosenbaum, but I think we need to discuss that more fully.
Okay. Are there going to be any special instructions other than what you've already submitted and the sixth count affirmative defense instruction from either side?
I believe the state will be asking, we got to discuss this more, but I believe we'll be asking for the provocation instruction. 805, I believe.
Okay, yeah, okay. Well, the reason I'm asking right now, I'm not going to hold you to this, is that I figure that the instruction probably will take 45 minutes, I would think.
To read them, the jury?
Yeah.
Yes, I would say.
I would say easily.
And so that leaves how much of the day, since you scared me off from tomorrow because you said, well, the jury will be worn out by the time we get there. So I think, well, I don't want to wear them out on Monday either. So if I'm going to be instructing them for 45 minutes or an hour, that takes us to 10, 10:30, 10:15 anyway, 10:30. So maybe if you were going to confine your arguments to maybe an hour and a half apiece, is that reasonable?
Very.
I'd request
Total time.
including rebuttal.
Yeah. Total time.
The state is going to need 2 hours for our primary and I'd say half an hour for rebuttal, Your Honor.
You know, I had the good fortune to be across the street neighbor, living across the street to the late Kenneth Grube, United States District Judge, when I was a lad. And Judge Grube is famous for his statement that the brain cannot absorb what the seat cannot endure. And if you don't like that advice, President Roosevelt, one of the renowned speakers of the 30s and 40s, when asked by his son for some advice on speaking, said, be sincere, be brief, and be seated. And so the message is loud and clear. Are you saying 2.5 hours to argue your case?
I'm saying that I think that the initial closing may take up to 2 hours. I'm not going to aim for 2 hours, Your Honor. Obviously, I understand that, but I want to have the freedom. There are a lot of videos, and we're going to be showing them. So there's going to need to be time for that. It's not just going to be standing up droning for 2 hours, but there's going to be time when we're going to need several minutes, I don't even know, probably 30 minutes worth of video that they may be watching at various times, which no one's going to be talking, it'll just be playing them. And I certainly don't want to be in a situation where our allotted time for closings, you propose an hour and a half, for example, we do an hour and 10 minutes or whatever to save 20 for rebuttal. I can't possibly budget rebuttal time because I don't know what the rebuttal is going to be. So I'd like that. We can put a cap of 30 minutes or something on it, but I I don't want that to come out of the first closing period of time, and I don't want to be limited. I don't want to have to budget that right now out of that first closing time. So if the court is disinclined to go along with that, then I would propose an hour and a half for our primary closing, an hour and a half for the defense, and then a maximum of 30 minutes for rebuttal.
They should get no more time than us.
Well, they won't.
Okay.
They won't.
Whatever the time
No.
the court says,
Yeah.
I'll deal with it. I think an hour and a half is adequate.
I agree with you that, and you make a good point about the number of exhibits, and so I'm going to indulge total time of 2.5 hours each side. But with that, I'm usually pretty permissive when people go a little bit longer than they should. I note it to the jury so that the jurors can make their own. If they get annoyed, they get annoyed. But I just warn the people. But I'm going to be a little bit tougher, and I may tell you to just sit down in mid-sentence if it keeps going. No, seriously. And I did it. I did it to one of the DAs that in the last several sequences, and mid-sentence. So 2.5 hours per side, and yours is to allocate as you wish. So we need to come back tomorrow. Tonight, you may send me your proposals for lesser included and any special instructions or the numbers of those you want. Well, let's get the jurors in, then we'll take care of these details. Okay, folks, the evidence is closed, and we're going to break for the weekend at this point. The lawyers and I have some work to do tomorrow and to get the case ready for you on Monday, and then I'm going to ask that you return at 9 o'clock on Monday. Even though the evidence is closed, it's still not appropriate for you to discuss anything about the case with anybody, not even with members of your household, not even with other jurors. Even if all 12 of you, all 18 of you are in the same place at the same time, you still can't talk about the case. And when you get back on Monday, you can't talk about the case until you've heard my final instructions regarding our law, which will take, I hope, less than an hour. I think that will be true. I think that probably closer to 45 minutes or even a little less maybe. And then we will hear the arguments of the attorneys. And they have graciously agreed that they will not exceed 2.5 hours in duration each, and may be less than that. And so it'll take a good share of Monday. And then the case will be put, well, then the procedure will be that we'll use that tumbler over there and we'll draw out names of as many jurors as are necessary to get down to 12. And then that'll be our jury that will go into deliberation. And then what happens after that is up to you folks. Any questions about this at all? We're in the final stretch. Please follow the instructions. And don't read, watch, or listen to any account of the trial. And enjoy the weekend and have a wonderful evening.